because this Michigan team can score. It's not like there's some stagnant bunch that relies on their defense.
Welcome to the Street.
I think he can win us games. I think, thank you for your service, Cliff. But I go back and watch last year.
We've got a little baby version of Wendell White, Reggie Bush cooking with Katron Allen, Nick Singleton. Katron Allen runs the ball. Podcast. Nobody wants to tackle him. People bounce off.
Hey, Straight from the Crest listeners. Stat Guy Chris here to remind you that this episode is brought to you in part by friends over at Protocol Beverage. Made by a few dudes in Erie, PA who wondered, why doesn't zero-carb beer exist? Protocol's new light shift gives you the ultimate beer experience with 0 carbs, a mere 80 calories, and they're shifting to what light beer should be. Savor the crisp, refreshing taste without compromising on flavor. Thanks, Protocol.
Welcome to Season 4, Episode 11 of the Straight from the Crest podcast. I'm your host, Michael David Krestovich. Big Game Beck joins the show today as we're going to talk about Penn State's dominant win over Purdue, preview the Nittany Lions game this weekend in Minneapolis, Minnesota. Big Game Beck, is this really a big game, or did you just want to hang out with me? Is that why you're on?
Yeah, I'm just here to hang out, Mikey. If this turns out to be a contest, I'd be concerned. Hopefully this is just another game, and the only reason I'm here is because Garrett has obligations, apparently. He doesn't just get to talk football.
He is in the back end of the show. Him and Colin, if you guys stick around the rest of the episode, we discussed the rest of the college football playoff, but Big Game Beck's on for Big Game Beck things. So, Justin, let me start with this, man. Penn State's 9-1. Top 5 ranking. Seems like they're at a good spot right now in the college football playoff. But back a few years ago in 2019, they were in the same spot with Minnesota. And this is the last time they went to Minnesota, they lost. How nervous are you for this game against the Gophers?
I'm not nervous going into this game. I think that we match up well. Yeah, it's a road trip. I'm sure Minnesota's looking to play spoiler. They did, I guess, sort of spoil a season back in 2019. We ended up losing to Ohio State that year as well anyways, so it's not like that game is what did it to us. Everything's still in front of us. We control our own destiny. We're set up to host a playoff game. We'd need a lot of help to get into the college football or the Big Ten championship, rather. I don't even know if I don't know if there's a path left anymore. So I think it should just be focused on winning the game in front of you, getting a home game, and punching your ticket to your first playoff appearance.
Last weekend ahead of the Purdue game, because Purdue has the most top 5 AP wins in FBS history, a lot of people thought that would be the game that Penn State chokes, including one of our own hosts, Garrett, who picked Purdue to beat Penn State. It was quite the opposite. It was a dominating performance. It was 49-10 Penn State. And on this show, our Straight from the Crest stats that we point to when Penn State doesn't win, we point to the turnover battle, third down conversion, and we point to how many penalties. Penn State won all 3, drew 10 of 10 to start the game, finished 17-19 for 3 touchdowns. He has 45 career passing touchdowns. He passed Darrell Clark Saturday, moving into 5th in all time. Just another great game from Tyler Warren, who ran for 63 yards on 3 carries. Leading receiver with 127 yards. He had his 3rd 100-yard game of the season, the most since Jahan Dotson did it back in 2021. Let's talk about the offense first, Justin, because we saw offense come out and score a touchdown on 3 of its first 4 possessions, and the knack on its offense all year has been those slow starts. What did you make of Penn State's offensive performance Saturday?
Yeah, I think it's actually 2 games in a row where we came out swinging. Washington put up 28 in the first half. Purdue, we got on them early as well. I think that it probably something to do with the level of competition, right? We're not playing Ohio State. We're not playing top tier opponents, but getting that experience of jumping out and scoring and clicking and firing on all cylinders, I think is good, and you can carry that into stiffer competition. It's a new system. The guys are playing under Kotelnicki. As the season goes on, you can expect them to get better, right? The players know the system better. Kotelnicki can call more plays. You can see more and more plays being called every week, right? Stuff that we haven't seen before, stuff that opponents haven't seen before. So I think that's exciting. I think we can continue to expect to see new wrinkles, new play design, stuff that keeps the defense on their toes and, keeps the offense excited to play. So I'm really happy with the fast starts that we've had the last 2 weeks. It's good not to play from behind, especially against teams that you shouldn't be behind in the first place. So continuing that, obviously you'd like to see it against Minnesota as well.
Justin, that was the 26th time since 2022 Penn State held an opposing offense under 100 yards rushing, the most in college football. It was a dominating defensive performance. Penn State played a total of 68 players, and the only touchdown they surrendered was during when the fourth string was on the field, and they essentially had the center Bulldogs out there playing defense. Who on the defensive side of the ball really stuck out to you?
Yeah, so Kobe King continues to impress. I think he's a really solid player. I don't know if his draft stock's going up at all, but I think that the season that he's put together, really holding the defense down, being that anchor, just a very consistent and impactful player. I'd imagine that he's going to play on Sunday. I think he's going to be really successful. Abdul Carter, we've really got to see him come on in the last couple of weeks. He started the year, he was probably a little quieter than people expected. He had those plays where you could see he was disrupting things, but maybe the numbers weren't there yet. But, just like the offense in a new system, Abdul's playing a whole new position. So I think we've watched, as the year's gone on, him get better and better and better. And I think that's exciting to see as we go into a home stretch and hopefully a playoff run. The two safeties continue to impress with both Reed and Wheatley. Losing Winston earlier in the year, I thought that could be a question mark. But they've really stepped up and played really well. And then Zion Tracy, I think, is somebody that I don't think anybody had on their board or really talked about going into the year, but he's continued to put together solid games in that QB 2 spot behind, or that cornerback 2 spot behind Harris. So defense as a whole clicking. Hopefully Tom Allen gets it ironed out, and we continue to put together these performances.
First time since 2011, Penn State's won its first 4 away games. They'll be tested on the road. We started the show with this, but the last time Penn State traveled to Minnesota back in 2019, it was a loss. Nittany Lions are 9-1. They're 6-1 in the Big Ten. They're going to head to Minnesota. They're going to battle a team that's 6-4 in the Gophers, 4-3 in the Big Ten. This is a squad. They rattled off 4 wins in a row, kind of a streaky team. Lost to UNC to start the year. Lost another game, rattled off 4 wins in a row before they fell to Rutgers 2 weeks ago. It's a team that's rejuvenated and rested. They're coming off a bye. They have 2 quality wins on the season. They have an impressive win over USC, an impressive win over Illinois. Head coach PJ Fleck has been their guy there since 2017. And the last time that Penn State and Minnesota met, Penn State won thanks to a big third quarter. Just kind of a roster rundown here. Quarterback senior Max Brosmer. He is a senior from Roswell, Georgia, transfer from New Hampshire, former Walter Payton finalist, which is the FCS's equivalent of the Heisman Trophy. He's got 14 touchdowns, 4 interceptions, not much of a rushing threat. He does have 4 rushing touchdowns, but it's all in goal line situations. He threw for 4 touchdowns against Maryland back in October, but has just 2 in the past 2 games. Running the rock for the Gophers is running back Darius Taylor. He's got 9 touchdowns and 672 yards on the season. And Brosmer's targets on the outside are Daniel Jackson and Elijah Spencer primarily. The 2 have 7 touchdowns combined and about 1,500 yards between the 2. Up front on the offensive line, they bring back 4. Their only loss was their center. And they have 4 guys that they're bringing back into this rotation. On the defensive side of the ball, this is PJ Fleck's strongest unit he believes that he's had since he's been there on the defensive end. They bring back 5 of their 6 linebackers outside of their defense. So it's a veteran-heavy defense. They got a very hard-working defensive back, just a first guy in, last guy out kind of guy, sneaky athletic. Coy Perrick, he leads the team with 5 interceptions. He's a true freshman. He's a baller. Johnner, has 4.5 sacks. And Anthony Smith is right behind with 4. A couple notes here. They've got 2 guys that are known for being PA guys. Donald Driver's son, Christian Driver, who spent time here at Penn State. He's on this Gopher team as a wide receiver. And actually, all Patriot League cornerback Ethan Robinson is a Bucknell transfer. So, Justin, I'm going to start this with the quarterback position. Max Brosmer, he's a guy who is very, very good when he has a clean pocket. He has an 86.5 passing grade in a clean pocket. It drops down to 40 when he sees pressure. What does Penn State got to do this weekend to eliminate Brosmer and any potential of a big day?
Yeah, so I mean, you kind of spelled it out. You spoon fed it to me there with his numbers on how he is against the pressure and how he is with a clean pocket. You know, he's a 6th-year senior. He's played a lot of football. If he's given the ability to process with no pressure in his face, he's going to be able to make that. He's going to be able to make those reads. You know, if we can get in his face, which we are very capable of doing. You know, we have 2 stellar edge rushers as well as plenty of pressure packages that Tom Allen calls up. I think we can make his day difficult. I don't really see this Minnesota team as being a high-powered offense. They don't scare me. You know, they do have some good playmakers on the outside, but I think that we match up well, and I think that the edge would go to our cornerbacks over their receivers. I'm not super intimidated by their run game either. I do think, even though, you know, you just went over that stat of you know, Penn State having the most times holding opponents under 100 yards in the last however many years. I have said that we're susceptible to that, but I don't think this is a team that can do it to us. When I look at Brosmer, I see somebody that is fairly careful with the ball. Only 4 interceptions on the year. You know, I'd like to win that turnover battle. I'd like to get pressure on him make quick decisions, potentially bad decisions. And I think also the game script can lead it that way. If we, again, start out hot and we go out to an early lead, force them into throwing the ball and pushing the ball downfield, I think that plays perfectly into our hands and exactly what our defense is set up to do.
The other key stat of the game for the Straight for the Crest podcast listeners is from the Minnesota defense. This is a team that's 11th in total defense and 12 points allowed per game. But not only that, Minnesota's greatest defensive aspect is they take away your tight end position. When other teams target tight ends, opposing quarterbacks passer rating dropped to a 50.7, which is 9th or 5th best in the college football. Of course, Penn State, his biggest strength on offense is at the tight end position. Justin, in the world that Minnesota schemes up a defensive plan that completely eliminates Tyler Warren or limits him, I should say, who's going to step up for this Nittany line? Because we saw Trey Wallace last week have a big game. We saw Fleming catch his first touchdown 2 weeks ago. Is it one of them, or are they going to rely on the ground game to get over this Gopher team?
Yeah, I think they're actually just going to line Tyler Warren up at center. And that way the emphasis is put on whatever tackles out there at the tight end spot. No, I think we'll do a good job getting the ball to Tyler. And if they do decide to game plan and take him away, obviously, like you said, other people have to step up. Going into this game, I feel like they are very similar to the way Washington looked when we played Washington. Washington came in, they had a great defense, and it was a great passing defense, right? They were a stellar passing defense, and it was something that we were supposed to be concerned about. And you saw us jump all over them and get out to that early lead. And I think that that's the same thing that we'll end up doing in Minnesota. If they do, double, triple team Tyler Warren every single possession, I do have faith in our guys to get open. I do think Trey Wallace will have a good game. Amari Evans has been pretty quiet. He could be an impact. The running game, Singleton, Allen, I think that they're always solid. It's not a one-man show. I mean, Tyler Warren gets a lot of the spotlight for this offense, and rightfully so, because he makes splash plays. He's fun to watch. And also, Kotelnicki emphasizes him, right? Like, Kotelnicki's the one calling the double pass that goes to Tyler Warren, right? So if they're dead set on stopping Tyler Warren, Kotelnicki can scheme something up with a different person in that position, right? If Tyler Warren has to be a decoy, that should make everybody else's life so much easier. And Kotelnicki should be able to recognize that early on in the game and adjust his game plan to make it so we're not, asking guys to win one-on-one assignments every time, but actually scheming up plays for other players. There's no point in beating your head against the wall if their whole game plan is to keep Tyler out of the game.
The home team in this series have won 9 of 14 games, but Penn State's won 6 of the last 8 games in total. We talked about that the 2019 loss. They won back in 2021, or 2022. I'm sorry, Penn State won. They used 21-point third quarter to do that. Let's move into prediction time here. That time of the show. Garrett, I'll go Garrett first. Garrett has Minnesota winning this game 28-27, but he also said he believes Penn State wins at 34-10. So let's just talk about Garrett's prediction first, because he was wrong against Purdue, and I don't think we called him out enough there.
He was wrong against Washington too. He picked Washington.
Yeah, I'm sorry, Washington first. That was the worst one. But everyone out there, Garrett has Penn State losing this game. Are you with Garrett?
No. I think Garrett is going with the if I don't expect them to win, they can't disappoint me mindset. So I understand where he's coming from. He's like it's like the they can't hurt me thing. But no, I'm not with Garrett. I'd like to see us come out and take care of business. Even against Washington, I didn't foresee the way that went. I think I had it 24-10. Or no, I think I had it 24-13. I didn't have us covering. In this game, we're away, so give them the benefit of the doubt that we don't hang 40 on them. But let's go 34-12. They're gonna have to kick 4 field goals. They don't get into the end zone.
All right, you got 34-12. Who's scoring the first touchdown for Penn State?
Tyler Warren's off limits because I'm not going to guess that, and it'll just be. Let's go Luke Reynolds. They're going to be so focused on Tyler Warren they forget about the other tight end, and Luke Reynolds gets into the end zone. He's got his first one against Purdue. I know he's like probably tight end 3 on the roster, but hey, it could happen.
That's a crazy take. I mean, it was fun to see him in the game. He showed a glimpse of what we have coming in that position, just a factory of tight end talent. But yeah, I mean, I'm with you. I have 27-14. I have 4 field goals as well, but I have a safety that they're going to get. I'm just kidding. I think Minnesota finds the end zone twice. I think Penn State controls this game. I think it's going to be a lot slower offensively than it has been the last 2 weeks, but I think ultimately Penn State finds a way to get this double-digit victory. Also, for those people who follow the NFL draft closely, this is a big matchup. We're going to see Ariante Irise, a tackle from Minnesota, go up against Abdul Carter. They're both probably going to be – I mean, Abdul's going top 10, I would imagine, but they're both going to be top 20 picks, so that's something. So Garrett has Minnesota winning this game. Justin and I have Penn State. Justin, I appreciate it. Big Game Beck. Thanks for coming on this week and delivering.
Oh, hey, I appreciate every opportunity I can to come and talk ball with you. So it's been a pleasure.
Welcome to part 2 on the show. Got Colin and Garrett zooming in from some coastal town in North Carolina. We're going to talk about the landscape of the rest of the college football world. Hopefully you guys enjoyed the Minnesota preview with Beck and myself. But now we're going to expand our horizons. Just 2 very, very knowledgeable guys. Unfortunately, one Ohio State fan and one's a Texas Aggie fan when they're doing well. But nonetheless, welcome on. I want to start with this, Colin. First question's for you. This news came out yesterday with McLaughlin. Does that really change much of Ohio State's trajectory moving forward? What does that impact have to an already diminished offensive line?
Yeah, I mean, like you said, they had Simmons go down against Oregon at left tackle. That was probably the one guy they would have said, throughout the year that they couldn't lose on the offensive line. They moved Donovan Jackson, the left guard, out to left tackle, and he's played well. Played pretty well against Penn State, kept Carter in line, and has played good couple games since. Without McLaughlin, I would say they're probably going to move. Well, I think Ryan Day announced today they're going to move Carson Hensman back to center, and they'll put Severfield at guard. So they had some more depth at guard than they did tackle, but I don't think there's any doubt that it's a pretty big loss to lose somebody that was probably going to be an All-American at center. So, and now you lose potentially 2 All-American offensive linemen. Pretty tough pill to swallow.
Probably the biggest implication game this weekend in all of college football, Ohio State, Indiana. Winner pretty much gets a lock in that Big Ten title game. Probably faces Oregon. Ohio State, the only time they've given up 17 or more was against Oregon. Playing a pretty good quarterback in Indiana that really hasn't been tested. What What's your prediction for this Buckeye Hoosier showdown in Bloomington?
I think Ohio State will. Depends on how the offensive line does. They'll have to shuffle around the offensive line, and hopefully they can run the ball. I know Indiana's ranked pretty high in the country in stopping the run, so that'll obviously be a big point for Ohio State to try and do. I think it'll be something in the ballpark of 27-13, kind of optimistically looking at it. I think the defense will hold them in line. I think Indiana hasn't really played anyone, quite up to Ohio State this year. Ohio State's got some good work in with Oregon and Penn State, and so they're going to be used to the speed of the game. So I think Ohio State should take care of business, but it'll be a good one in Columbus.
Garrett, last weekend BYU suffered its first loss. Georgia rolls Tennessee. What was up with the Bulldogs last weekend? They kept their season alive.
Yeah, I mean, Tennessee just kind of hits this wall where they just show enough offensively, and then they can't take the lid off. A lot of the deep balls that we saw them hit in the past couple of years, throwing Jaden Hyatt with the Hendon Hooker at quarterback, and just kind of those wide stacks they've been able to run and just throw it deep. Like, they're getting those looks with Nico, but he doesn't hit them. He throws them 10 yards over their head every time. So they probably get 3 or 4 looks a game where you got to hit 1 or 2 of them. And they just don't do it. So they're having to kind of plod their way down the field, and it's just hard to do against Georgia, hard to do in that environment. I will say I think Georgia got a couple beneficial calls early in the game that probably kept them in it. And then, Carson Beck was able to do enough to, he didn't shoot themselves in the foot too many times.
Hey, Carl, we're on a podcast. What up?
All
right, well, Carl.
Yeah, we got
Harp too.
Yeah, and Harp. Wow, we got the whole gang. But what's up?
Yeah, we're filming straight from the press right now.
Mikey's having a stroke right now, given that the pod is being taken over. But no, I think that if Beck is not making mistakes and he's vibing and playing well and not throwing 3 picks, like, they are a team that is good enough on the line of scrimmage to beat anybody. I would be concerned playing them in a 4-game playoff, because it's going to come down to, no one's going to fake their way through the playoff. It's like, who can play 4 straight games? They're one of probably 5 teams that can do that. So, and then BYU, they've been playing with fire for the last several weeks. And so it's hard to stay focused in here. And it was hard to stay focused for them in the Big 12, because unless you're playing Oklahoma State, who's pretty much quit, anybody can beat anybody in that conference. So, and they got a big matchup this weekend against Arizona State. So it's just, it's a roulette wheel there. And the SEC is a roulette wheel, just on a different level. And so there's just a lot of different things going on right now.
Yeah, let's talk about the greatest conference in the history of sports, in any sport, the SEC, that no one really pays attention to. It always gets disrespected and no one elevates it. Colin, Texas is the only 1-loss team in the SEC in a stacked conference. What's the team that you least want to match up against as a Buckeye fan in the playoff out of the SEC?
As a Buckeye fan, I think going against Milroe would obviously be pretty difficult. I think Alabama still has a lot of talent. And, I mean, it does, playing a quarterback that can control the game with his legs like that and kind of make plays like that would obviously be a tall order. But, I mean, look, Georgia still has a great defensive line, and they got Kirby Smart. So you never want to don't want to give him, 30-plus days to prepare. But, I mean, there's a lot of talk about how good the conference is. And when you lose teams like Vanderbilt and South Carolina, I mean,
Kentucky,
I don't know if that really quite, goes with that narrative, but we'll see.
Garrett, I know you're really big on safe spaces, and you always ask when we hang out if this is a safe space. This podcast is a safe space. You texted me before the show. You wanted to talk about the SEC and what's going on X right now with just a very, very big gap in SEC versus Big Ten. What are your thoughts, and what's going on there?
Listen, and I think Colin can attest to this. I have been, at least in our neck of the woods, the SEC's biggest defender. Have I not?
Yes, absolutely.
I
Garrett has always been an SEC defender, even though, you've been an ESPN defender of the of how they treat the SEC.
I have. Look,
for years.
The same way it could be perceived that there is I don't know how to say this properly. The same way it could be perceived that there is a coalition of media coverage in this country that might slant a certain way depending on how you look at it. The same, and it tends to be a little bit, coordinated.
Mhm.
I truly believe that is what's going on right now among some people that we've talked about this podcast. I'll call them out. I'll say Josh Pate. I'll say all the ESPN guys. I'll say Joey Galloway. I'll say Greg McElroy.
I hope Josh Pate.
I hope he does. Yeah, I will. I'll say it. The messaging is coordinated and it's deliberate. They want 5 teams in the playoff, and they don't care if they sacrifice an 11-1 Indiana. I mean, they're trying to sit here and say that
the funny thing about ESPN
that,
and all these
that
people is
Notre
no one talks about strength of schedule till the second to last week of November, because no one's been talking about Indiana's strength of schedule when they were 7-0. It was just a great story. Oh, Indiana's 7-0. They're 6-0. Everyone was all happy. Oh, cool, it's Indiana. Now all of a sudden they're 10-0, going into Columbus as a top 5 team. People don't want to see them in the playoff.
But this is what's happened is you had the first 7 weeks of the year, and all of these teams lost to teams who were underwhelming. Alabama lost to Vanderbilt. They lost to Tennessee, right? Tennessee's okay, but Vanderbilt's not that good. As much as they wanted to build them up, they're not that good, right? Texas has played 2 SEC teams with a pulse all year. And it'd be stretching it to say Vanderbilt has a pulse, but they played Vanderbilt and barely beat them. And then they lost to Georgia by 3 touchdowns at home in a game that they probably could have lost to more, and Carson Beck threw 3 picks. Ole Miss has lost to Kentucky and LSU, right? And Tennessee has lost to Arkansas, who's 5-5, and then went and played Georgia and lost. My point being, all these teams had 2 losses, and now that they're playing each other, relative to each other, it's, oh my gosh, Tennessee and Alabama, they're great teams. Georgia and Ole Miss, what a battle. Texas and Georgia, what a battle, right? But they're playing each other at this point. And so it's like, oh, they're just beating up on each other. Is Arkansas and Kentucky and Vanderbilt beating up on each other? Like, is that what we define as beating up on each other? Probably not when you lose those games. Meanwhile, Indiana, Penn State, Ohio State go and beat the shit out of every team that they have lined up in front of them except for each other.
He's heated,
it's just, and not to mention, and here, I'll go one more step, okay? A&M is 8-2, right? Ole Miss is 8-2. Who are A&M's losses? Notre Dame, ranked 6th. South Carolina, on the road, ranked 18th. Who are Ole Miss's losses?
Vanderbilt.
No, 4-6 Kentucky and 6-4 LSU. But hey, somehow Ole Miss is 7 spots better than A&M. Nobody, because A&M will always be the redheaded stepchild of this conference.
Right.
They always will be.
And this whole rant came back to Texas A&M being the redheaded stepchild of this conference.
The point is the Big Ten and A&M are getting screwed, which screws me.
Pretty much.
So I know you made reference of it already, but Kansas, they're looking to play spoiler for the 3rd week in a row. They have Colorado. Penn State has some history with Minnesota. And you could even say with Florida last week, giving LSU a game and beating them, they host Ole Miss. I'll ask both of you this question. Of those 3 games, which team is most likely on upset alert the biggest?
Who was Ohio State, Indiana, Penn State, Minnesota, and Kansas, and who?
No, I did not say a word about Ohio State. Keep the Buckeyes out of this. I'm talking about Penn State, Minnesota, Ole Miss, Florida, and Colorado, Kansas.
Florida could definitely beat Ole Miss. Florida could beat Ole Miss. Ole Miss is a little Jekyll and Hyde.
If Ole Miss offense doesn't show up, I think they're in trouble.
I mean,
that's what keeps them in the game.
I think Florida can definitely beat Ole Miss. I think that Minnesota. I think Penn State will be all right against Minnesota. I think Minnesota will try to control the game. I'm not saying it'll be pretty. I think it could be ugly, but I think Penn State will find a way to get it done there. I think Ole Miss. The SEC. They'll find a way to lose a couple games in there. I don't think they're going to find a way to get 5 teams in.
Mm-hmm. If I had to rank them in all honesty, I'd say probably the least likely of the 3 is Penn State at Minnesota. The second most likely is probably I'd say Florida against Ole Miss. Kansas is just playing well, and I'm still not totally convinced on Colorado, because if you can shut down Shador, and you can shut down Travis Hunter, they have Jimmy Horn Jr. They have number 44, who's Colin's favorite guy on NCAA football. Basically the Tyler Warren of Colorado football. But if you can shut those 2 down, Kansas can pick them off. And so the Big 12, again, is very even when it comes to the line of scrimmage. So I'd say put that one. If DJ Lagway plays well, though, Billy Napier has been granted a clean bill of health, I guess, for the rest of this year and to start next year. They still have some ball to play for. And so Ole Miss has been in the media a lot. And when Ole Miss is in the media a lot, whether it's talking about the playoff, whether it's just getting ahead of themselves, we've seen them get knocked back a little bit. So going to the Swamp is tough. So I would put that one right up there with Colorado against Kansas as the top 2 potential upsets this weekend.
I asked Garrett this last weekend, Colin. I want your thoughts. Who's playing the national championship game?
If I had to pick right now, Well, it's hard because if Ohio State goes to the Big Ten championship game and beats Oregon, then they're probably going to end up with Oregon as the 5 seed, Ohio State as the 1, and then they would play each other in the semifinals. And then if I actually am of the opinion that if Ohio State beats Indiana semi-handedly and then takes care of Michigan, then even if they lost another close game to Oregon, I think that even with 2 losses, with the second loss again coming to Oregon in the title game, I think Ohio State would stay the 5 seed. So I think they're kind of on a crash course to play each other in the semis. I'd probably go with Texas right now. I'd go with Texas. I think Georgia's pretty susceptible to getting picked off early with Carson Beck, although Georgia would probably be my second pick because of Kirby. But I think Georgia get picked off early. And Texas still has good quarterback play. So I think Quinn Ewers is kind of flying under the radar this year a little bit, but they're still talented and still good quarterback.
So you got Texas and who? In the
Ohio State.
And Ohio State.
Yeah, I would say Ohio State.
Interesting. I probably with Alabama.
Yeah.
And I think, did I say Ohio State
that's
as my other team?
Yeah, maybe Alabama. I don't know. Yeah, honestly, it'll be somebody from there's 4 or 5 teams I think can be in it. I'd say Ohio State, Oregon. I think Georgia, Texas, and Alabama. I think the national championship will come from one of those 5. I think, a lot of people are talking about Ole Miss and even Penn State to a degree. I just don't know if they can win 4 games. 4 games is just a lot to win. I think that you could win 1, you could win 2, but winning 4 would be pretty hard. So I think the national champion pretty confidently is going to come from that 5.
Yeah, we're a few weeks away here, but that was our Week 13 preview. Thanks to Colin and Garrett for carrying the boat there. We'll be back next week with probably the trio of us as well. But appreciate you guys listening. Guys, thanks for hopping on and making time out of your week. And shout out to Dards and Harp who hopped in there.
No problem. Have fun.